Okay, we are up to step 6. We are assigning our skill points and picking out our mastery. And before we can explain really what a mastery is, I want you to understand the basic mechanic of how the game is played. So when you are making a skill check, you're rolling an attribute plus a skill. So let's say agility plus ranged. Maybe you've got a total of 6 dice. Any of those dice that come up a 5 or a 6 are going to count as a success. If you have a mastery, a 4, 5, or 6 will count as a success. So for you statistical math junkies, you'll have a 50% chance per die instead of a 33% chance, which is much higher. And what that means is you're really good at your mastery. You're going to succeed a lot of the time. So wherever you place that, that's kind of your core area for your character, which is why we recommend, if we scroll down a little bit here, that you put it into an active skill. Your active skills are your combat skills, so ranged, melee, unarmed, or spellcasting. One of those 4 should be a mastery. It's possible that your path or archetype may give you one of those, and so you may already have one, which is great. If you get it that way, that's fine. Spend it where you want to, as long as you have at least one active mastery. We found that players who don't pick one of those are usually pretty upset later. So if you want to do that, you have that caveat. You may get frustrated if your masteries are all in technical skills, because you will not be as good at combat. Okay, as far as the actual ranks, rank 1, you've put a point into it. You have basic training. You spend an afternoon in a training course. You have some idea of how this works. Rank 2, you maybe practiced a little bit and you've learned a bit more. So now you've got enough knowledge to get into trouble. You could start figuring things out. If we're talking the computer skill, you could brick an operating system, but you could also do some cool stuff. By the time you hit rank 3, you are a skilled professional. You know what you're doing. You're not making mistakes nearly as often. Rating 4, you're a veteran. And then 5, you are a master of whatever craft that is. As far as what the skills are, we already talked a bit about your active skills. Your technical skills, there are not too many of them. I want to say 15 or so. They cover a variety of useful abilities. Engineering, if you're going to be building something, you will need engineering to do so. Piloting is necessary if you're going to be in a ship. If you're using either a spell matrix or a traditional vessel, you will want piloting. The same goes for gunnery. If you want to be firing out of a spell cannon or using a ship's weaponry, you're going to need that gunnery skill. Athletics and perception have been used in almost every role-playing game I've ever played. Athletics is going to be any sort of exertion or athletic contest if you were racing somebody or having to run for a long time and wanted to figure out whether or not you're able to sustain that exertion. Perception checks are going to be called on anytime you come into a new area where there's information you could glean. And so these are very, very frequent. And it's helpful to have somebody in the group with a high perception. Arcana is used to identify spells and to understand the basic workings of magic in the Circle of 8. History and lore is, a smattering of information about all different types of history and lore. You are basically Jeopardy man or Jeopardy woman. You have a variety of skills as pertains to academia and know a lot about history in the sector. Flame reading is used to read the flames for divination, so it does require that you have fire magic at the very least. Without that, the skill is worthless. First aid will allow you to stabilize somebody who's been injured or utilize medical equipment. So if you have medical equipment that's going to heal somebody, you will need first aid to actually use that gear. Navigation is typically used when plotting courses for vessels, primarily in the Emerald Depths, but occasionally elsewhere. Warfare is going to be used when conducting, let's say, a battle. Say it's you and 6 other ships versus 12 enemy ships. We're going to make a warfare check initially to set the battlefield up. Artificing is creating Magitech items. So engineering works for technology. Artificing is for magical or Magitech items. Construction and maintenance is probably on the way out as a skill. And we're going to fold that most likely into engineering. That's based on player feedback. So you may not see this one going forward. If you do, it probably has been collapsed. Negotiation is exactly what it sounds like. If you are brokering a deal of any type, you're going to be rolling this plus charisma. Larceny. If you want to steal something or do any thiefy activities, larceny is the check. So it's not just stealing. It can also be, let's say, forging documents is another example of how you might use larceny. But it is a useful skill for anybody with questionable morals. Religion is an understanding not just of your religion and the rites and rituals necessary to communicate with your deity, but also other religions and the history of those religions. So this can be used as an active skill. If you possess a covenant and miracles, you're rolling religion, usually plus intuition, to make those checks. So this can be in a way an active skill. So it can serve as an active skill, but doesn't always. And that's why it's down here in the technical skills. And then finally, the last one is investigation. And that's exactly what it sounds like. If you were investigating any sort of information, you're going to be rolling this usually plus intuition, occasionally plus logic to glean whatever information you need. And that's it, guys. That's the entirety of the skills. So all you need to do as a player is record the skills that you're getting from your path and your archetype, and then you've got an additional 5 to work with. You can add those to any skills that you have to raise them up to 3, no higher, cannot begin with a skill higher than 3. But you can also purchase other skills at 1, 2, or 3. So if you have some skill points and something isn't granted by your path and or by your archetype and you want to purchase it, this is your opportunity to do so. Again, just as a final closing thing, when you spend that mastery, I do recommend putting it in an active skill. It is super powerful, and people find out very quickly in gameplay how much better it feels to roll a mastery than it does another skill. So, spend yours wisely. Anyway, guys, that is step 6, and we're done. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go on to step 7, which is perks and flaws, one of my very personal favorites. Jump into that in the next video.